Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be talking to you on types of manuscripts in our scientific journals. I'm Dr. Lalit Maini. I'm the editor of Indian Journal of Orthopedics and also the editor of Journal of Medical Sciences of Maulana Azad Medical College. So I do carry experience of few decades on uh, publications and journals. So would start on this interesting topic on what are the various types of manuscripts in a journal. So now the manuscript is actually an end result of a research of a scientist in a journal. So it's actually a responsibility of a researcher to publish his work, because anything which is known as, and is not shared with the scholarly world is actually a loss of uh, science. So we look at manuscripts for updating our knowledge, which gets converted into a change in our care guidelines. And any manuscript which is coming out of a research should invariably addressing a problem which is there in a day-to-day clinical practice of a person. So whenever there's a practical problem, it creates and motivates a research question, which defines the research problem, and you do a research, and it finally gets published, whether it is a positive or a negative outcome. In the recent past, even negative results are being encouraged to be published, especially in this present COVID scenario, where we've understood that even a negative outcome is a very, very important thing to know. In orthopedics, probably the type of research which is being done most commonly is in the red box, which is either an observational study or an experimental study. And it then gets converted into these particular type of manuscripts. Do remember, time is an essential parameter which decides upon what type of research you're going to do, and then it gets converted into a particular type of a manuscript. So it might not be a yes always. Like the best example could be that if you want to follow up a case of type 1 osteoarthritis of knee, a grade 1, over the next 20 years, it gives you a huge amount of knowledge and information. But to wait 20 years to understand a particular phenomena might be too slow to understand. So that is where there are various types of research which travel forward and backwards in time. And there are various types of research questions which we address to actually produce that manuscript. And this popular pyramid of the level of evidence, we all know, and the highest level would be a meta-analysis, and the lowest would be an expert opinion. This has come out of the phenomena of evidence-based practice in medicine, in which it is understood that the more systematic the research is, probably the outcome which gets printed is the most true one. So it is assumed that the systematic review would be the strongest evidence and an expert opinion would be the weakest evidence. So if we have to actually enumerate the types of manuscripts, there would be three broad categories: review articles, original articles, and short communications. So most of you know that under the review articles, the most popular are the systematic review and the meta-analysis. And there would be various type of short communications depending upon which journal you're addressing. So to me, original article form the bulk of the type of manuscripts which are published in journals. They somehow give a cause effect outcome to a particular problem, meaning they might give you a clue on what is the cause of a particular problem, or they could give you a clue on what is the effect of a particular experiment or an exposure or an intervention, which is common in orthopedics. So the original articles come out of observational or experimental research, and the various type of studies could be a case control study, a cohort study, a retrospective study, or an experimental one. The randomized control trials are the most popular amongst them. So these formed 70% of most of the articles in a particular journal. This is a rough sort of a figure. And the other type of manuscripts are the review articles. Now, these are the articles which are accumulating the data on a particular research question on whatever has been published in literature and trying to summarize a more meaningful outcome. There are various systematic methods now described on how to do them. The more a person sticks to the guidelines, the better probably is the evidence-based outcome which would come out of it. And then if the data can be pulled up and that could be further statistically evaluated in the form of a meta-analysis, it even gives you a better sort of a message. So there is a unwritten rule sort of that these reviews should be coming out from apex institutes or from experts who are working in that particular field, and it cannot be accepted at times by people who are not masterly on a particular field and then they do a systematic review. Why it is so that the the eye that an expert has to a particular uh, symptomatology or a presentation or a descript in literature would be different from a novice. Narrative reviews are also published, but again, they are invited and their level of evidence would be lower than the systematic reviews and the meta-analysis. And then the last group is the short communications, which will include letters, images in clinical practice, commentaries, grand round, book reviews, or the editorials, which come out of experts again, or the editors of journals. Now, this again brings out a debate between, eminence and evidence. And I could tell you that short communications do have a huge amount of importance because at times you cannot have original research or meta-analysis on certain sort of clinical scenarios, which do come out into literature in these short communications. So if you look at various journals, they might have different type of manuscript types. Like this is the Singapore Medical Journal, which has a pictorial essay as one of the manuscript types. If you look at another journal like the Clinical Orthopedics, it has a totally different way of asking for manuscripts. It has a different head for clinical research. It has a different research for subset for basic research, and they would enumerate that what type of articles they would take in under clinical research and basic research. And if you look at Indian Journal of Orthopedics, we normally follow most of these which have been described till now. In addition, we have a special sort of type which is called a multimedia article, and that is to encourage videos to be published through the journal. And classically, such an article would have an abstract and references which will go into the print, and a supplementary material which is a video, which would be up to a 9 minutes video, properly edited, and it has its own guidelines. So different journals would have a subtle difference in the article types, but the gross common list would be similar in most of them. So publishing your research is very important. I began with this aspect, and which is a responsibility of a researcher. And what type of a manuscript would convey the best meaning of your research is actually guided by the research question, the research design, and that is how it gets converted into a particular type of manuscript. So the key to everything at the end of the day is the research question which you're addressing, which guides you upon the final type of manuscript you're going to do. Thank you very much for your attention.